Hi everyone, it's Miss Allie here, and today we are talking about squash. There are so many different types of squash, like summer squash, which includes zucchini, yellow squash, patty pan squash. They are delicious and really easy to grill up in the summer. But since it's the end of October, today we are talking about winter squash. Winter squash is really similar to summer squash, but it has thicker skin and comes in all different shapes and sizes and colors. Some of my favorite winter squash are acorn squash, butternut squash, delicata squash, spaghetti squash, honey nut squash, and pumpkins. So today, I have 3 winter squash for us to investigate. I have the adorable honey nut squash. How cute is that? We have the super cool delicata squash. And of course, we have a good old pumpkin to explore. Let's check them out. So to begin our squash investigations, I want us to take a closer look at each of these winter squash. Let's start with the honey nut squash. Take a close look. What do you see? What does it look like? What color is it? How big is it? What's the texture like? Awesome! Let's look at the delicata squash next. What do you see? What colors are on here? Does it have the same texture as the butternut? Is it the same color all over? How big is it? And then, of course, we have our pumpkin. Does this one look different from the other squash? How heavy is it? What color is it? What texture is it? What size is it? These are all very different winter squashes. Like I said, they all come in different shapes and sizes and colors and textures and tastes. So, we are going to dive into these squash and see what's inside and maybe even get to taste the seeds. Take a minute to write or draw in your journal about what you see when you look at each of these winter squash. We are going to take a closer look inside the honey nut squash. So I'm going to carefully try to cut it open to see what's inside. If you're curious about looking inside a winter squash at home, ask an adult about helping you cut one open. You got to be really safe with this stuff. Wow! There's the inside of our honey nut squash. I love the color, and it's really cool to see that all of the seeds are collected in this one part of the squash. How beautiful. To me, honey nut squash look like a miniature version of butternut squash. They have the same shape. Honey nut squash are a little bit darker in color, and butternut squash are much bigger, but they do have the same shape and they look similar inside. So now I'm going to scoop out the inside. See all of those seeds in there? I want to take them out and save them because when you bake up winter squash seeds, they're really delicious. And you can add so many different seasonings to your winter squash seeds. So just take a spoon and scoop them out. You get some of the gooey guts in there too, but you can just separate the seeds out from the gooey part. And and put it in a bowl on the side. Perfect. So now we have our empty honey nut squash, and we can save that for later. And in our bowl, you can see that we saved the seeds, and I'm going to separate out these seeds so we can bake them up later. Next, we have the Delicata Squash, which is this guy who's yellow and has different ridges all along the squash. And you can see there are green and some orange spots in those creases. And it's light yellow everywhere else. Very beautiful. So again, we are going to carefully cut this open the long way. Okay. Woo! We got it. Wow! I actually wasn't expecting that. It's really cool to see how this is so different from the inside of the honey nut squash. You can see the seeds go all the way through the squash instead of the honey nut one, which just had it in the bottom part. So this one has a lot more seeds, and it goes all the way up here. Let's see, is it a different color? Very similar, but I would say the honey nut is a little bit darker orange, and this one's lighter.
Okay, so we're going to do the same thing with this one. We are going to scoop the seeds out and save them in our bowl, because these are great roasted up as well. Alright, we got one totally cleaned out. It almost looks like a little canoe. Those will look really pretty later when we cut them up. Now for the other side.
Perfect. Okay, so now we have 2 hollow Delicata squash. Very cool. Let's bring out the honey nut one more time to compare. Very cool to look at the insides of these. I told you they're all so different. Okay, now it's time for the pumpkin. I know it's the moment we've all been waiting for. Welcome the pumpkin. And you can see that I have my pumpkin hat on, so I'm very excited about carving this pumpkin. So what we're gonna do, this thing is so big. So what we're gonna do is just cut the top of the pumpkin out so we can look what's inside. And I'm gonna scoop out all of the seeds and all of the pulp that's inside, so it will be a hollow pumpkin. And if I wanna carve it later, I can. So let's take a closer look at our pumpkin. This one's very big and round. And you can see that it has a little stem on top. So this is where it used to be connected to its vine when it was growing in the field. But when they picked it, they snipped off the top. So now it's just a very, very short little stem. Okay, so I finally cut the top of it off. It's time to take it off and see what's inside. Whoa! Oh my goodness! You can already see all of the little seeds that are hanging from inside. This is awesome! Okay, I'm gonna put that aside. Wow! You have to look inside this pumpkin. It's so cool! Look at all that pulp and the seeds. Wow! And it almost looks like a spider web or a skeleton. It's really amazing. Let's see what it feels like. Ooh. It's super slimy and gooey in there. I pulled out some of the seeds that are hiding behind the pulp in there. That is so cool. I love exploring this pumpkin with you guys. Things are already getting pretty messy here. So I'm gonna continue to clean out the inside of this pumpkin and put all of the insides in my bowl that I have on the side here. Whoa! And then I'm gonna separate out the seeds and roast them up later with the butternut and delicata squash. I want to talk to you about how winter squash grow. So, just like all plants, you take one of their seeds, you plant it in the soil, and you give it the sun and water and soil that it needs to grow. So winter squash start to grow in the summer, and they suck up all of the sunlight they can with their massive leaves. So winter squash grow on vines that have huge leaves that are bigger than my face. And those leaves help absorb all the sunshine they need to grow. So once they grow, they turn green first, and then as they ripen in October, they turn yellow and then orange. And here's a fun fact. Since all of these winter squash have seeds, what does that make them? A fruit or a vegetable? They're actually a fruit. So all of the squash I have here today are fruit because, as you saw, they all have seeds inside, and that's what makes a fruit a fruit. So I know a lot of people get pumpkins so they can carve them in October and make jack-o'-lanterns, but there actually are some pumpkins you can eat. Like sugar pie pumpkins are pumpkins that you can scoop out the flesh from and bake it, and then use it to make a pumpkin pie. And of course, all of the other winter squash we have here today, the honey nut and the delicata, and we don't have them, but if we had the butternut or an acorn squash or spaghetti squash, they're really good if you just slice them open like this, hollow them out, and roast them in the oven. Then you can eat all of that yummy orange part. And squash, to me, tastes very sweet, and it's really good seasoned with cinnamon or nutmeg. Very fall flavors. Okay, now when we look at the inside of the pumpkin, we can see that I hollowed it out a bit and got rid of most of the seeds and most of the inner pulp. I put all of it over here in my bowl, and I'm going to pick all of these seeds out now so I can roast them. Let's compare the different seeds. This is the seed from the pumpkin. You can see that it's very big and it's kind of like an oval. This is the delicata squash. To me, that looks rounder and smaller than the pumpkin seed. And then we have the honey nut seed. This seed is smaller than the pumpkin seed and more narrow than the delicata seed. It's really cool to see how different they are. We're going to take the delicata squash and lay it this side down, and then take your knife and just cut little slivers of it. And as you cut, you'll see that they make these little crescent moon shapes, and that's how we're gonna bake them. So I have a tinfoil lined baking pan, and I am gonna take the seeds, spread them out on here, and then take our little slices of delicata squash and lay them flat on the pan next to our seeds. I I laid out my Delicata squash on my baking tray and spread out my seeds. I put olive oil all over the whole tray and then put salt on all of the things that I have on my tray here. Then I decided to make these cinnamon flavored seeds, so I sprinkled cinnamon on them, and I decided to make these salt and pepper seeds, so I put salt and pepper on them. We're gonna put them in the oven and roast them up. Time for my favorite part, the taste test. First, I'm gonna try the salt and pepper seeds. That's a nice salty, crunchy snack. Let's try the cinnamon ones. These might be a little sweeter. Ooh, those taste like fall. I love that. Okay, and then we can try one of our little smiling face squash. Wow. That is sweet like candy. It tastes so sweet and I love the soft texture. These turned out awesome. Okay, so the final activity we're gonna do today also has to do with the squash seeds. So we are going to take a plastic Ziploc bag and a wet paper towel. I just took a paper towel and ran it under the water in the sink and then squeezed it out a little bit, but it's still wet but not dripping wet. So you're gonna fold it and put it inside your plastic bag. Okay, so it will look like this. And then we are gonna pick some of the pumpkin seeds we have left over. So we have one of the big pumpkin ones, and I'm gonna put it inside the bag on the paper towel. I'm also gonna take some of my Delicata seeds and put them in the bag, and my honey nut seeds and put them in the bag. So they look like this right now. But now that I'm thinking, I think it would actually be better to put them sandwiched between the paper towel so that it's wet on both sides. So try to get them in there. Okay, that's better. So see, I folded the paper towel. So there are multiple layers of the paper towel in there, so it's good to put the seeds in between the layers of the paper towels so that there's dampness on both sides of the seed. So what we're gonna do with this is seal it up and get some tape and tape it onto a window that gets a lot of sunlight. And over the next couple weeks, we can look at our seeds and see if they start sprouting at all, because when seeds get water and sunlight, they can start to sprout. So it'd be really cool if we could see these winter squash seeds sprout inside of our house. I would love if you tried this activity. Although it's not a sunny day right now, I think this is a perfect spot for my pumpkin seeds to grow. So I'm gonna tape them right onto the window there, and hopefully we can see them sprout in a few weeks. Thanks for watching this video about winter squash. I hope you had fun investigating our squash with me and looking at all of the fun things that we can do with seeds. So remember to save your seeds so you can either grow them inside, eat them as a snack, or even do art projects with them. Winter squash have endless possibilities. Happy fall! Thanks for watching!